nothing more obnoxious than Kevin Fallness' hall monitor tweeting out, respect the clock, respect the clock. We're close enough. It's 3 minutes past 5. On the pre-show text or tweet I send out, I said, Russo, Radio 502. So we're 2 minutes late. Russo, sue me. I'm sorry. What is with Fallness, man?
Yeah,
He's
especially because this guy starts pregame shows. Like the other day, it was a wild game, and the pregame show started right at the time of the game. Like, what's he doing?
I don't know what he's doing. And here's the thing. This is going to be an interesting litmus test for Fallness, because if things go according to what obviously Wild fans want and the team wants, this is going to be a deep run through the playoffs.
We're pacing ourselves.
And he, by all accounts, is he up to it? Because that means a lot of pregame shows and a lot of postgame shows, and I guess I'm questioning whether he really is up to that challenge, because that's going to be doing a lot of shows that, guess what? He's not experienced in doing because of this team's track record. He's got no idea how he has to, basically be up every night, maybe for 2 solid months with this stuff. Is he ready for that, do you think?
Yeah, this especially once the 8:30 game starts.
Yes.
He's back here.
Yes.
And we're on the road, and he's going to have to be, driving home at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., kind of like the Nino Ryder at night. We blamed it on Brett, though. Like, we think Guardsy would have had you out on time, and Brett didn't let you know. So we blamed it on Brett.
Well,
by the way, I do have a gripe with you.
Sure, go ahead.
Like, are you a Seinfeld guy?
I'm a, how do I explain this? I would liken it to Springsteen. I have great respect for Springsteen as an artist. I've gone to see him in concert, but I'm not religious about him. Similarly, I have respect for Seinfeld. I've chuckled at some of it, but I'm not as religious about it as I'm supposed to be.
Okay, so I would say that I'm a huge Seinfeld fan. The TV show,
right?
The TV show, and one of the great. I was listening to your interview with Andy Luger, and he was talking about H&H Bagels.
Yes.
And one of the great episodes of Seinfeld ever was the H&H Bagel episode. That one is what introduced us to Festivus.
That's true.
That is the one where Kramer went back to work at H&H Bagels and wound up going on strike and all that stuff. And so when he talked about H&H Bagels, I was just down in Boca Raton. I had no idea that H&H has like stores all over the country now, not even just in New York City. So I actually went to H&H Bagels there and had an H&H for the first time in a long time. I had no idea they delivered.
Are they as good as advertised? Are they as good as Luger suggests, in your opinion?
The ones in New York, definitely. The one I would say in Boca was a knockoff. I think it has to do, like, the New York City water is essentially like, what you need. The other thing I heard you guys talking about was pickles, and I am a pickle fanatic.
You are.
And especially half sour pickles.
Oh.
And you can't get them anywhere like New York City. Even Cecil's here, which is phenomenal.
Yes.
And they sell half sour pickles. They're definitely not as good as
I used to be a big pickles guy. I'm not as much anymore. But I loved the hour with him because generally it tends to be pretty heavy with him, and I like just going in like 50,000 different directions. That was a lot of fun, actually.
I do not like tongue, though. I cannot imagine.
Me either.
Yeah.
No, I'm not a tongue guy.
My grandfather used to have. We used to go to Ben's Deli all the time. Which if Andy Luger is listening, he probably knows what Ben's Deli is. We used to go in Roslyn, New York. I think it might have even been Manhasset. And my grandfather used to get tongue sandwiches, and I could not even imagine what.
I'm with you 100% on that for sure. All right, let's get to some puck talk. So the team has this unusual situation from they call it a scheduling quirk, whatever, where they have 4 days off fairly late here in the season. I think it was 3 or 4. So going into that mini break, clearly there are concerns, right? It's all right. What are we doing here? Do we have to get into some better rhythm at this point, even though we know we're kind of stuck from a playoff standpoint? And so I was very curious to know how the team would approach this. Would this be, we're going to do a mini training camp, we're going to break everything down, get real fundamental and elementary because we have this extra time to do it? Or is it more, get out of here, we're not going to do any extra work? That's overthinking it. More than anything else, we just need to freshen our minds. What has the Wild management approach been in this regarding these days off?
Okay, full disclosure, I missed the last two practices because I was in Denver, but I have been reading my trusty colleague over at The Athletic, Joe Smith, and just listening and watching the interviews and things like that. And I think they had 4 days off. They took the first two to completely rest, shut down some tired bodies. Which is the way I think a lot of coaches would have handled this. And then the last 2 days, not only did they do a lot of things that they want to make automatic in their game, but they did a lot of small area games and things like that, which is to sort of simulate quick decisions, battle level, compete, and things like that to sort of get ready for the stretch run here. I think the 4 days off are going to be tremendous for this team. There's a lot of teams right now that are playing really, really tired. The only two teams in the league that had this type of break are Utah and Minnesota. You're right; it's an anomaly in the schedule. But I just think that this came at a really good time because obviously there was starting to be negativity that crept into the game. The one thing I will say, and I was talking to Chris McFarland about this, the GM of the Colorado Avalanche while I was in Denver. And Colorado's going through a tough time. Dallas is going through a tough time, and Minnesota is going through a tough time right now. And it just feels like these three teams for 3 months have known where they're finishing in the standings, who they're going to probably play in the playoffs. Obviously, more so Dallas and Minnesota than Colorado, because that changes on an everyday basis with whoever's going to land that 8th seed. And it just seems like we just pay attention to the Wild struggling, but the reality is those teams are struggling very much as well. And the other issue that those teams are having, especially Dallas, is they are really hurt at the wrong time of year. So Minnesota, at a very least, is pretty healthy right now. All their guys are available to them. And I think that this is probably a product of just, it's kind of twofold. These players don't want to get hurt. And so they don't have the juice in these games, but they also don't have the juice in these games because they know these games are basically exhibitions for the season, for the postseason. The problem is that you don't want bad habits to creep up in their game. And that's what I think John Hines and Bill Guerin are getting a little bit frustrated by and are trying to sort of nip in the bud.
Russo Radio, if you have questions or observations for him, hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line at 64686. Right now we're getting a lot of pickles-related texts, including Ben from Roseville, who writes, Boar's Head whole dill pickles are fantastic. I don't have great experience there, but I'm a big Boar's Head guy. My guess is...
By the way, remember when I got all those candles sent to the office?
Yes.
This is what's next coming for you, is just a bunch of pickles.
I would prefer more Boar's Head meat. And bagels would be fine, too. Like I said, I got a dozen of these world-class bagels that I get to bring home and try out. I like Boar's Head lunch meat, but the lunch meat I like, Luger scoffs at because it's things like, like chicken breast or boiled ham, and he basically looked at me and said, "What's wrong with you?"
I
when I mentioned
it.
all those. Yeah. So
plus, the other good thing about that conversation is he was so worked up, obviously, about the bagel thing that now all of a sudden he's going to order you a bunch of really nice meats.
That's it. Yeah. That's okay.
So,
although
this is a smart move by you.
If he orders tongue, though, I don't think I have it in me like
but
you.
Corned beef and pastrami, that'd be fine.
That I would. That I absolutely would indeed consider.
I got to meet Andy. I think that he and I are much more alike. Both from New York, all that type of stuff. So
that's quite
everything. That was a very entertaining conversation. Let's put it that way.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, because like I said, it wasn't quite as heavy. Although, we ended up deviating into a discussion about whether the state of Israel is allowed to exist.
Yeah,
which is not light. Yeah. That's a pretty heavy subject as well.
I was interested in that one too. I thought that was a great conversation.
That's very true. Yeah. So let me ask you the leash question. I got into this with Louie because I asked him flat out, okay, playoffs starting, is it Gus Bus or is it the kid? And he said, well, it's Gus Bus, but he said the better question is, how long is the leash going to be this time?
Right.
And I agree. To me, that's what fascinates me the most here as we get closer because the leash, I think, has tended to be a little bit long. So what do you think on that? Well, do you have any sense of how long the leash is going to be, we all assume it's going to be Gus Bus in Game 1.
Yeah. The one thing I will say to not answer the question at first is Gus has performed really well for the Wild in the playoffs. If you actually look at the way that he's played, none of their losses have had to do with him. Both last year in the Vegas series, even in the Dallas series. The PK, could he have been better on? Absolutely. But I think that the PK as a whole in that Dallas series a couple years back was the bigger issue. In terms of the leash question, I think that the one thing that earlier in the season really showed when John Hines was going with essentially a strict rotation is that there is a lot of trust in Wallstedt. And if he plays really well down the stretch, they've got to be smart with their goaltending decisions. And I think this organization hasn't been very smart with their goaltending decisions. Dating back to when Marc-Andre Fleury inexplicably started Game 2 of the Dallas series. They were just messing around. This is coming off a 50 save win by Gustafsson in Game 1. And I don't think there's a team in the league that would have not started Gus in Game 2. And, I just think that even going back to the year that Cam Talbot was on fire down the stretch, and then they acquire Marc-Andre Fleury, and next thing you know, Fleury is starting the playoffs against St. Louis. So they have this, now that wasn't John Hines, but this traditionally, the last couple of years, it hasn't been the smart moves here. So I do think that they've got to be really smart and just understand that if Gus is playing really well, you got to ride him, and if he's not, then you got to be quick to maybe make a move for Jesper, and hopefully that ignites the team. The one thing about this team that's different than a lot of them going into the playoffs is their amount of depth. Like right now, tonight, technically, the lineup that they're throwing out there could be their Game 1 lineup. But we both know that the second there's a loss, all of a sudden there could be a Nico Sturm put in or a Nick Foligno put in. Or if Nick Foligno does start Game 1 and Danilo Urov is out of the lineup, that Urov is clearly available to play. So I do think they have a lot of pieces that they could play in the playoffs. But when it comes to goaltending, I don't think you can go with a straight rotation. Even Jesper, when I asked him that question today, didn't seem to think that was smart. That you ride the hot hand in the playoffs. And I think as long as Gus is good, but I think they start with Gus. I just think they start with the veteran.
Full circle, you write, after Quinn Hughes blockbuster, Rossi, Buium, Ogren return to Minnesota. What do we need to know about that?
Yeah, I was out in Denver the last couple days. I was out there actually for a conference, so this really was happenstance that I was able to instead get these guys on the phone, go over to their hotel on Tuesday and sit down with all three of the guys. And, I think the majority of them, not the majority, all three get why Bill Guerin made this decision, as much as of a shock as it came to at least two of them. I think Rossi expected at some point he was probably going to be moved, but Buium was so professional and so mature about it when I talked to him. Like he basically said, I get it. Like, they don't have the time, this organization, I'm paraphrasing, they're in a win now mode. They want to win a cup, and they don't have the time to wait for me to essentially become Quinn Hughes. They had to go get Quinn Hughes. And so he gets it. And that he basically, the quote in the story is, you can't be disappointed when you're traded for Quinn Hughes. I think Liam felt the same thing. I think he's really appreciative to what the Wild did for him, the opportunities they gave him, and understands why it happened. Rossi is very appreciative and grateful to the Wild, especially for what they did for him the year that they diagnosed him with the myocarditis, and especially the way that Bill Guerin treated him throughout the time. But I do think the last couple of years, he knows the trade rumors that no matter what he did, it just felt like they were trying to move him.
Right.
And, that he didn't feel the energy when they tried to re-sign him last summer. And then even when he agreed to the 3 years, $5 million a year deal, he knew it was an extremely tradable contract. And he said disrespected when after a really good regular season, they put him on the fourth line almost preemptively, going into that playoffs. And that was, I really think that was a premeditated thing. I felt it coming. I remember talking about it on our podcast, coming before that it just felt like Rossi was sort of going to be the first move. And they dropped him to the fourth line, and he felt like he was disrespected and told him that. But I do think that he is not holding a grudge. I think that they're excited to be back here tonight. Wish they had a night off where they could have seen their old teammates. But I think that in an arena, that they had a lot of really good moments in. I think it's going to be a really cool night. And the other thing that I know all three were real appreciative of because they talked to me about it. And I know Brock Besser's going to probably feel that way tonight too, is that, they're going to be honoring Jessie Pierce with a moment of silence before the game. And obviously all four of them have, knew her and had great relationships with her. One of the first things that Rossi and Ogren brought up to me was Jessie when I sat down with them the other day. So I think that they're going to be really pleased that they're here to be part of that tonight.
Russo Radio Now, Wild on the Fan tonight as well. How worried, right, 612 guys, should the Wild be about the amount of hockey Boldy, Hughes, and Faber have played this year to have any deep playoff run?
Well, I'll just go back to because remember going into the Olympics, I kept on asking, Bill Guerin that question, and Bill was not concerned. Obviously, I don't think that all three have performed greatly since the Olympics. I do think that these 4 days will probably really have done them wonders. Maybe just to reset even mentally. It's a lot of hockey. It's a lot of putting on your gear, off your gear, practicing. And in Quinn's case, he plays a ton of minutes. Well, in all three of their cases, they play a ton of minutes. Boldy especially, I think probably needed a bit of a reset. He was on fire for a while after the Olympics, and then really hit a rut the last 7 or 8 games, and has not. It's not even just that he's getting chances that he's not burying. He just seems off his game. So I think that these 4 days will be great for him. Anytime you get these type of days off for guys like Faber and Quinn that play a ton of minutes, I think it's going to be good. The other thing that's going to happen tonight that I think is a good thing is that they did the experiment with Spurgeon and Quinn and Brodin and Faber, and they're going back to it tonight. And I talked to you about it last time I was on with you that, as much as I love the fact that Spurgeon is not a risk taker when you have, sort of a gambler in Quinn Hughes, I do think that size-wise in the playoffs, I think you probably have to go to a bigger couple, tandem. And so Quinn and the one thing, and Jared Bednar was talking about this, the coach of the Avalanche when I was in Denver, all three of these teams have been experimenting lately because you don't want to, once you have to pull something out of your bag of tricks in the playoffs, have it be the first time where it's not familiar. So what John Hines did here, smartly the last week or two is kind of, test things out and see how things look. And now he knows that if there's a tweak that he needs to make in the playoffs, that this is not going to be the first time that Jared Spurgeon ever plays with Quinn, that they're going to be able to read off each other and things like that, and vice versa with Brodin and Faber, who they've played together a ton in years past. So I think that worked out well, but I'm not really concerned about any of the three.
What are the odds that before, or as we prepare, let's say as we reach the day before, a couple days before the first round of the playoffs, that Guerin announces a Hines contract extension? Is that at all possible or likely?
I've reached out to some people that would know. It doesn't seem like it's gonna just happen. It could be in a drawer somewhere.
Right.
I do think he is coming back, as obviously he's got 1 year left on his deal, and I think Bill Guerin will probably want to extend him. I think that it's an easy thing for him to do. So I'm sure they've had conversations, and it's the type of thing I don't think that you announce right before the year, but I think that it'll happen after. Obviously, we have to see what happens in the playoffs and things like that, but I think John is going to probably get an extension this offseason because you never want to coach going into the last year of his deal.
No.
I think the Wild have tried that before, and it becomes a life of its own just by us troublemakers.
On the other hand, on the other hand, to me, it's okay. Let's play this out. If you have a worst case scenario and you get swept in 4 in the first round or lose in 5, to me, all bets kind of have to be off then. No,
I don't disagree. I think it depends how the first round goes.
True.
Obviously, they're playing the Dallas Stars. The other thing is that in today's day and age, in like John Hines is going to be an NHL coach again if he doesn't, if it's not here, right? So in the way it usually works is that the other team is going to pick up that contract. So if you extend them, a lot of times it's not guaranteed money that's going out your door anyway if you do have to make a decision. So I think a lot of times you just at least want to give them that 1 year. But they've got a lot of decisions to make, not just on the coach, but a player on the Wild today so I wasn't at practice yesterday. So he saved his April Fool's joke for me today, and he came right off the ice and told me that he was surprised that I haven't written about the contract that has been agreed to yet, and he had me on a wild goose chase. But I started texting agents of every single UFA on this team, and then all of a sudden I walked in the locker room and he just gave me a wink, and all of a sudden I realized this was his April 2nd joke. But look, I mean, it's crazy the number of UFAs. I mean, we don't know the futures if Marcus Johansson and Matt Zuccarello want to play beyond this season. Obviously, Vladimir Tarasenko has played really well. Zach Bogosian is somebody I'm sure the Wild are going to want back. Spurgeon is technically due an extension this offseason if they even want to give him a 1-year extension, because he can't, I can't imagine him wanting to play somewhere else. I talked to him about that for that 1,000-game story. So they've got a lot of decisions to make for a lot of their players. Obviously, Bobby Brink's an RFA. So there's going to be a lot of, it's going to be a busy offseason for the Wild.
Defensive pairs are back tonight. Is that correct?
Yeah. So Spurgeon will be back with Brodin, Faber with Hughes, and then Middleton and Bogosian. And that's the way I would assume the top 6 are going to be come playoff time, assuming they're completely healthy.
The Luigi theory on how to finish up this regular season, given how funky it's been, kind of locked in, etc., is he has no fear about the team meandering. And he says, rest people. Then in his approach, the last 2 games is all you need to get everybody back on schedule and hopefully get something going. I don't know if there's any reason to believe that's the approach the Wild are going to take, but what do you make of how we clear this out?
I mean, I've asked Bill Guerin about load management and things like that. Not that that's the same thing.
Right.
That is definitely not something he buys in. He even pointed out to me that, like, when I said, why don't you start lowering Quinn's ice time or maybe even take him out of the lineup, that Quinn wouldn't even accept it. I mean, obviously, but I do think, look, they've got a lot of guys in the press box right now. Like their bag skates after practices now, it's like an NHL skate. They got so many players out there. They're probably gonna at some point here sign Stramel, but he's hurt right now. But the question is, when that happens and when he can get better, and all of a sudden they add that, then Iowa's obviously not making the playoffs. The hope is you go on a run, and now you're gonna have a lot of Black Aces up here as well. So they got a lot of guys to try to start to get in the lineup to just keep them a little sharp. The Fabry is maybe they bring a Hunter Haight back. Obviously they got Damon Hunt, who hasn't played forever. Petrie, players like that tonight. Nick Foligno. So I do think that they are gonna at least do that, is start taking guys out every now and then to just get guys in the lineup that haven't been out. But I do think that I agree with you. Like I remember one year they were playing St. Louis. The Wild played that game where they just sat 3 or 4 guys game 81 and 3 or 4 games game 82, and game 1 of the playoffs they didn't look like they'd ever played before. Right. So I think the way to do it is once they clinch, hopefully for them tonight, now maybe the next 4 or 5 games start putting guys in and out of lineup, and then game 81 and 82 try to go with your playoff lineup.
That to me that makes most sense. Which sport is more demanding, pro basketball or pro hockey?
I'm always going to say hockey.
Yeah.
Everything.
Because?
And I'll tell Krasinski that to his face.
Well, Krasinski loves this. I mean, that's the thing. I'm actually playing to he absolutely. Now, on the other hand, I did ask the question that had come in. I could have ignored the question, so I am a co-conspirator, I guess, to a certain extent.
Honestly, I covered the NBA for a little bit. I respect all these guys. Obviously, I've spent my entire career around hockey players, and what they do behind the scenes to get ready for games, and how crazy practices are, their training, all that is tremendous. But I'm sure, being around basketball, you could say the absolute same thing. These guys are physical specimens and all that stuff. But the one thing I will say is, like, I don't think that the average person understands what it takes to play 25, 40 second shifts in a game. That really is a tough task where their everything starts burning and all that. And that's why I'm just always amazed at watching Quinn Hughes play the sport, because that guy just seems to never get tired. He plays 30 minutes a game. And then you hear about his workout regimen behind the scenes and things like that. It's impressive stuff.
Enjoy this evening. Thank you for the time, and we'll chat next week.
All right. See ya. Bye-bye.
Russo Radio. The Wild back in action tonight. That's where Russo is. The Vancouver Canucks, the opponent tonight. So pregame 6:45.
Yes, sir.
7 o'clock face-off.
That's correct,
give or take. And then the Wolves are in action tonight against the Pistons. I think that's because that's an East Coast, Eastern time game. You can hear that via the Timberwolves channel this evening as well. So we have you covered both ways, either way, however you want to look at it as well. Let's get a bottom of the hour pause in. Let's get to something controversial when we come back.
Every game is a big game when it's Wild Hockey. Feel the intensity, the excitement at Grand Casino Arena this season. You can get your tickets today, wild.com/tickets. Wild.com/tickets.
On this story, but it is definitely worthy of a minute or two, I think, on the program as we attempt to follow the story. The International Olympic Committee said, I think it was a week ago, today's Thursday, right? It was a week ago today, I think.
It is.
That it is implementing a one-time genetic screening for the 2028 Olympic Games. Here's the quote from the IOC president. This was via a video. The scientific evidence is very clear. Male chromosomes give performance advantages in sports that rely on strength, power, or endurance. It's absolutely clear that it would not be fair for biological males to compete in the female category. In addition, in some sports, it would simply not be safe. I don't find that particularly controversial. I tease this as a potentially controversial segment because for a lot of people it is, for reasons we have discussed, quite frankly, over and over again. The game becomes, if you agree with that position, you are, at least in the eyes of some, by definition, transphobic. My answer all along has been, you could be. It's possible you are, but it doesn't have to be that you are. I have felt for a long time that there's a common sense aspect to this story based on science that should not make this all that controversial and should make itself evident for reasons that we have forever had these particular dividing lines. It is interesting to read that the longtime Olympic broadcaster Bob Costas was on CNN, I guess. They were asking the anchors were asking him for his reaction to the news. The quote from Costas, "There is a reason why there are men's and women's sports." He brought up as an example the transgender college swimmer Leah Thomas, saying it makes no sense to have an athlete rocket up the rankings soon after changing sex categories. Here's the quote: "If that's what the person wants to do, that person should be treated with dignity and respect. But there ought to be common sense, and common sense is not transphobic." He, in his mind, believes that Coventry, the IOC president, laid it out, in his words, exactly correct. And I can't agree more with the Costas reaction to it. But it quickly, like pretty much everything, becomes a political issue. And part of the allegation is that if you endorse this position, you are opening the door. You are enabling those who are transphobic to celebrate, to dance on the proverbial graves of would-be athletes who just want the opportunity to be what they want to be or who they want to be and to still participate. And the percentages of individuals who do this is so microscopic that why is this battle worth fighting at all? That logic never has made a bit of sense to me. It wouldn't matter if it was a single individual who fell into this category. And by the way, there's quite more than a single around the world at this point. It is about the fairness and integrity of the competition. Does it, in a sense, then run the risk of excluding certain individuals? The answer is yes. That's where it gets tricky, and that's where it gets difficult. But I'm with Costas. The person should be treated with dignity and respect. But that's a separate subject from, in this case, athletic competition. And again, I believe almost any poll that has been done suggests that the vast majority of individuals, in this case, we'll say Americans, agree with the Costas position, agree with the IOC position. But in many cases, I think they're afraid to say so. They have been made afraid to say so. I think that's starting to change. I think there's more of a belief that taking this position, let me back up and say it this way. If the only reason you don't endorse this position is concern that you're then going to be called transphobic, you're being dishonest on the issue. That can't be the reason you don't speak up on it. That silences a point of view that I think, in this case, reflects reality. That's a long way from saying that individuals should be discriminated against, should be in any way, in the larger sense. And you could say, well, you are discriminating against them if you're not allowing them to participate. But the comeback to that is participation is separated for a reason in this case, always has been. And I know there's a million asterisks about what kinds of drugs that can be taken to lessen some of the, for example, testosterone aspects of that advantage. But the evidence speaks for itself. And I think it's fairly irrefutable at this point. By definition, does that mean some individuals are going to be excluded? Say, not really. They are included based, again, on the tests that are going to be offered. It should be as simple as that. And what's really rather frightening is you'll see this occasionally offered up in evidence, allegedly as evidence. We'll have individuals with a straight face say, who's to say that there is any advantage on the male side? Who is to say? Isn't that limiting of what we think of with women? Is there really, we think that's true, but is it really true? And the reason that becomes an approach is because we allow, in this case, ideology to overtake reality. And in this case, I would say science. The ideology of allowing these individuals to live with dignity, which is certainly my position, and I think the position, I'm guessing, I know, based on what he has said, Bob Costas and many others, that alone is enough to say, well, we're going to pretend on the basis of making sure those individuals are respected. What's left out is that respect comes at the expense of women who are attempting to participate in these sports in what might be classified as a level playing field. And as long as this is not a Rubik's Cube, as long as you allow your ideology to trump science for that larger reason, I might respect it if you acknowledge it and say, well, no, I deep down, I understand there's an advantage involved, but I think there's so much to lose in enabling the transphobes to win that's why I'm pretending there are no advantages for males in sports. And there's no reason we have ever separated them the way we have tended to do so. I wouldn't agree with that, but I'd at least say, well, at least that's at least more honest than pretending that we don't really know their advantages there. Who's to say? Who are we to put limitations on those individuals? Does not make a lot of sense to me. And it's a big story. And frankly, I think it has been underreported and underplayed for the reasons I just laid out. People don't know what to do with it, or they're afraid if they do anything with it, they run the risk of being accused of being transphobic. which is an entirely different subject, should be an entirely different subject. I'll say again, you can't, there's very possible that you're celebrating this announcement because you are transphobic. Very possible. But it's not mandatory. It's not required. You can come to this conclusion for a very, very different reason, one that once upon a time was understood, but got sort of eaten away and diminished over a period of time because of the ideology issue as well. Let's get caught up and come back. We'll get to a couple of texts as well. I've got a couple of NBA items to discuss. We didn't have a top 5 at 5, but maybe we'll do a top 5 at mini 5, in which Blakemore can weigh in on the Wild's game tonight against the Canucks, and I can weigh in on the breaking news that we had earlier regarding your Minnesota Timberwolves in action against the Detroit Pistons. Stay tuned.
Just in case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barreiro's Top 5 at 5. Brought to you by Gutter Helmet of Minnesota. Never clean your gutters again. Learn more at gutterhelmetmn.com.
Well, we'll say better late than never, and I have a hunch that I know where you're going to begin this, shall we say, maybe truncated version of the Top 5 at 5, 520 Sports Fix, 25 minutes later than that.
Time now for the obligatory Kevin Fallness Minnesota Wild mention.
Although the Wild did get a lot of shine during the 5 o'clock segment with Michael Russo, so we love that. But yes, Wild Canucks pregame 6:45, puck drop shortly around 7 right here on the Fan. If I get the Wild can clinch the playoffs, and we're happy for that, even though we really know that we're already in it. It's only a matter of time. But there is
anybody. Let me ask you this question.
Yes.
In the history of playoff clinchings in hockey, has any fan base ever attempted to storm the ice?
Probably not.
Because is it because it's a physical impossibility? Because you'd have to climb the boards? Or is it that we just have too much dignity and we're not interested in doing it?
I feel like it would probably be. I think if they won the cup, we could talk.
Oh, God, yes. If they won the cup, are you kidding me? They should take the boards down.
Take all the glass down.
Yeah, take all the glass down, for sure. Anyway.
But no, that has not been attempted to my knowledge.
Right.
But there is. So I get it's not the most exciting game. We're kind of slogging along until the playoffs. But there's a ton of storylines going into it, mainly that's Quinn Hughes' old team against 3 former Wild players from this year, Marco Rossi, Liam Ogren, and, of course, Steve Bouillon as well. So there's also going to be a moment of silence for Jesse Pierce.
Yes.
Lots of stuff going on with this game. And I'm sure first TV timeout, first period, we're going to get the welcome back to the state of hockey, Steve Bouillon.
Yeah, for sure.
And Marco Rossi and et cetera.
So it sounds like of all of them coming back, Rossi is acting like the most aggrieved or most bitter. Correct?
And in my opinion, he's justified, and he should feel that way.
As we've talked about with Russo, it actually makes sense because I think there's more meat on the bone in that regard. So it'll be an interesting sidebar to pay attention to, although I think we feel good about still what we got in return.
I mean, I said that during the playoff series. Like, why did they just...
Well, we all did. Yeah, you were not on a limb there. I mean, we were all talking about that it did not make any... Well, you could say to them it made sense, but it didn't really make any sense whatsoever. It was too quick a change and too quick of a departure for sure.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, if you're not going to play him, then don't draft him.
Right.
Because the Wild drafted him, so don't even bother drafting anyone under 6 foot. Your Wolves. Here's the starting lineup for your Timberwolves, who start shortly on the iHeartRadio app. Conley, DiVincenzo, Ayo, Randall, and Gobert. That is your starting lineup. Anthony Edwards out. Now, it's funny it's doubly listed as out on the injury report on Timberwolves PR. So it's listed right knee, pain syndrome.
Oh, both.
And
illness.
Semicolon illness as well. So he's struggling.
The larger, more important issue regarding this is if he does not play tonight, he will not be eligible for postseason honors. He's lost all of his wiggle room in that regard. And by the way, if he's hurt and or ill, you can't worry about that. But we're seeing it happen around the league where, because I mean, I don't associate Anthony Edwards with load management. It's never been an approach that this team, to its credit, has embraced. I think the most he missed, I'll double check here, but I think the most number of games he missed going into this season was like 3. But this year he's missed more. And, but again, he's being penalized because of other players. He's not in that group that I think was ever trying to take advantage of load management. But I still would say that there was a reason the rule was put in place, and people in this league who know what they're talking about, they understand that. And unfortunately, some players who are not load management players are paying the price for it. And I put this under the classification of the way it goes. It's unfortunate because there can be some financial implications with that as well. But that's the reality if indeed he does not play tonight.
Are you familiar with a club called the Washington Wizards?
Indeed.
They did a...
You mean the Generals? They have been renamed the Washington Generals more recently because of the Harlem Globetrotter nature of being the joke team. But
yeah, well, they're in the news again, and not for giving up 80-some points to BAM, excuse me. But no, they're April Fool's skits that they did, which is classic basketball halftime show, half-court shot for X amount of dollars. I think it was $10,000. But the April Fool's joke, how wacky, is that they blindfolded a fan, made him think that he hit the shot, and then pulled the rug out from under him. So then, today...
That's vicious.
Well, today, the Wizards tweet out, apparently from getting backlash, that the whole thing was scripted. And the whole thing, it was a planted fan.
Of course it
and
was.
It was all a big ruse on top of the ruse. It was all just a scripted bit, sketch almost. I don't know how I feel about this. Mostly in my head, I'm like, why can't we have fun anymore? We can't do anything wacky. We got to always be. But there's a little part of me like, that is pretty cruel if it were real. But it wasn't real. I don't know where to.
Here's where I would land, although I've not heard about this story until you brought it up. I would say you're right. We've lost our sense of humor in general. But I'd also add that the Wizards might be the one team that shouldn't be messing with this stuff because they have no equity. They are an embarrassment. We talked about them earlier. You mentioned they gave up the 83 points. They've made a farce out of the season, not just that one game where they gave up 83. And as a result, you might say in the board meetings where we're thinking about doing this, we go, this is actually kind of clever, but I'm not sure this is the year we should be doing it. I'm not sure we're the franchise that can get away with doing it. So maybe we don't even bother. On the other hand, they may say, well, nothing else has worked for us. Let's have some fun with this. I have absolutely no idea.
Here was the statement. We apologize for last night's April Fool's joke that left many wondering if we had misled a fan. The skit involving our mascot and other members of the performance team was scripted and intended to celebrate the day. All participants were in on the joke, but we missed the mark.
Yeah.
That's what they said.
They probably were left with no... I mean, I'm sure they're getting pounded more because of the quality of the franchise. And... my guess is a better franchise might get a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt, but because it's the Wizards. Now, maybe I'm wrong, because we, again, have no sense of humor anymore. It would seem fairly evident and obvious that if you're going to do this as a bit, that's the bit. That, in other words, you've got the mascot and you've got people who also work for the team with the mascot that are all in on this same thing, and it's just basically to provide some entertainment. But the Wizards are not in a very good position, I think, to be taken seriously on anything.
I mean, the amount of times that you've seen someone in an opposing team jersey that gets...
they get the crap beat out of them.
Yes, or something, right. And you're like, okay, that's a plant. But anyways, lastly, I have any excuse to bring up golf. I know you're not a golf guy, but I kind of want to ask you about this.
Okay.
So we already know Tiger, for obvious reasons, not going to be playing in the Masters next week. The Masters is... even for non-golf people, is something that maybe you do check out. But now, another big name, Phil Mickelson, is out. So, as a non-golf guy, if you were going to watch anything or check in on anything, it would be the Masters. But these two big names...
for the first time in forever, right? That they've both been out?
Yeah. So, it's first time... it's two household names that are not playing in the Masters. That affect a non-golf guy at all, or are you not even...
It wouldn't matter whether he participates or not. For some casual fans, it might make a difference. But can you now also make the argument that there are enough other golfers who have emerged and the event itself is big enough that the connection through those two, unless you haven't even bothered to watch golf for the last 20 years, is not what it once was.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would lean that way. For me, realistically, I don't want. I'm in the maybe 10% of casual fans that just don't really care that much about golf or even the Masters. I think it's pretty. I understand why it's as big as it is. I understand why it's a great tradition. It just has not been in my wheelhouse. So that's where I would look at it. Now, why is he not participating?
He's a private family health matter is what was in a statement. So I don't know what that means. I don't want to know. It's his business.
Yeah.
But so he'll not be playing. But yeah, I knew you weren't a golf guy. But if there would be a situation where you would, it would probably be this weekend. But it sounds like not even the case.
Not even the case. Exactly it. Let's make this the top of the hour pause. Better top 5 at 5 late than not at all. We got a half hour yet to come. Let me get to some texts and perhaps a couple of other controversial subjects before we wrap things up. One that is very feels like it's very sad to me, but I'm looking for more information regarding this particular story. Stay tuned.
The tournament is underway. Don't miss a second of the action. You can tune in to 100.3 KFAN and on the free iHeartRadio app for hoops coverage again this Saturday. It's all driven by Dave Smith Motors.
For the last several days, I've had texters ask me for an opinion or a reaction to the news that the Bulls cut a player named Jordan Ivey. And largely the reason I'm being asked is a belief in the part of some of those texters that he was cut for making statements that you might not agree with, but that he should have every right to make. And I think the latest rant had to do with the celebration of Pride Month or a Pride Night, whatever the case may be. And I knew very little about this story beyond the headlines, but I will defer in this case to a frequent guest over the years on this program regarding this story. Joe Cowley has covered the Bulls for a long time. And Joe Cowley, this is background that might or might not matter to you, is about as politically incorrect a guy as one can imagine. He tends to push back against that whole notion and cancellations and etc. to the point in some cases where I think it has hurt him. And here's what Cowley has tweeted. He's written a lot about it, but I'll give you a tweet as a guy who covers the team daily. I know the Ivy dismissal is a soapbox moment for a lot of people on the outside, but here's my perspective. I'm all for free speech and religious expression, but my guy was bizarre and a distraction in a young locker room. Reporters are there to ask questions, not to be asked if they've been saved from a 20-something kid who went from Silver Spoon AAU circuit to BMOC at Purdue. Get some life experience as kid, then you can preach to me. He's saying that, in fact, I think he viewed, let me see if I can find the other tweet I was looking for, that there was more than this going on, because a lot of people said, just please let me know what's your position on the Bulls letting him go over his position on this. And Cowley has written, there was more than this going on. This was the final straw, and the locker room will not shed a tear. So I don't pretend to know the whole story. I don't know if we'll ever know the whole story. But I will say that Joe Cowley has never had difficulty pushing back on political correctness or cancellation when he believes that's what's going on. And he is suggesting that there's more to the story. Because if you want to turn this into a free speech issue and you want to present Ivy as some kind of a martyr, you're going to concentrate on only this part of the story and the timing, because that's more convenient. There's no gray area there. It seems more black and white, and you think you've got a team boxed that they are canceling, and that they're doing it for all the wrong reasons. But the story on Ivy seems to be more complicated than any one declaration on his part. Again, it's not convenient that way because it's not as easy to just savage it and to say, well, the Wolves really, or the Bulls in this case, really blew it. But I trust Cowley as a guy who's in that locker room every day and covers this team, that there is more to the story. It may well have been a piece of it, but it apparently was not the piece of it as well. So for whatever worth, for people who've asked me for several days, that's did I call him Jordan? It's Jaden Ivey, by the way. I don't know if I used the wrong name. But Jaden Ivey is the player that we are talking about, the former Bulls guard, and it's another one of those subjects where I think you're going to tend to believe whatever fits your preconceptions on this political issue, the volatility of this issue, rather than allowing the story itself and the real details within this story to dictate how you feel about it. We rarely allow that, or a lot of people, I think, rarely allow that, and that's exactly why I tend to follow what the Cowley viewpoint is on this. I mean, he believe me, he's a fairly fearless guy, sometimes to his own detriment. That's been true. And to that extent, he's saying you can make it about that one rant, but it's actually about more than that. Now, he's very critical of the way the team has handled a lot of things, the way it is run. I mean, again, you look at what the guy the Wolves got from the Bulls thus far, Ayo Dosunmu has done, and you go, what? Why did they trade him? And the Bulls can say, well, because we had other people who kind of did some of the same stuff, and we can't keep everybody, whatever the case may be. They're a train wreck. That whole franchise is a train wreck, and thank God, from a Wolves standpoint, they were willing to trade off these pieces in their minds as excess pieces where they didn't intend to re-sign them. They said, well, we'll just try to get something for them. Because Dosunmu has been obviously a revelation since he's been here, and I don't even think we fully understand how important he can become to this team in the future. I really don't. I'll be shocked if they do not find a way to keep him. I'll be shocked that he doesn't just become a part of the present for this team, but a part of the future for this team as well. 763 guy is very, very unhappy with us. Very unhappy. Why? Because to this point in the show, there has been no mention of a Twins pitcher throwing 6 shutout innings and the Twins hitting 3 home runs in the 9th. 763 guy, I plead 100% guilty. And I will tell you, quite honestly, I am giving the Minnesota Twins and this one game exactly as much coverage as it deserves. No more, no less. I can't play the game, 763 guy. I'm sorry, and I won't play the game. It happened, so it's fair to talk about it. It's news because it did take place. It's confirmed. But I'm not going to pretend that one nice victory in any way, shape, or form proves that this team is suddenly everything is much more than we thought it was going to be. The level of interest in this team is low. If they have a bunch of games in a row or 2 out of 3 for 2 months that go kind of like this, there'll be people who will pay attention to it. But the larger issue remains the larger issue. The Twins have every right to run the team however they want to run it. Every right. If they say, we want to cut $65 million or so from the payroll over the course of the last 2.5 seasons, they have every right to do it. They have every right to decide to sell the team and then change their minds about selling the team. They have every right to complain about reporters asking about payroll. They can do as many of those things as they want. But we all have a right then to process what they've done and to then make our own decisions about how much weight we're going to give any single outcome as long as they choose, their right, to go down this path. Everybody has a right to do so. Now, maybe you're a hardcore enough ball fan that you get aroused by one victory in a row and one well-pitched game and a game where the Dong Show took over late. That's fair. I'm not here to tell you can't, but you got to be smart enough to understand why it ain't going to be the lead story. And it ain't going to be, at least on this show, a story that we're going to give an endless amount of coverage to. And by the way, we gave, actually, the Twins a decent amount of coverage yesterday and got complaints there, too. That we were talking too much Twins yesterday when the subject was broader about the team, the state of the franchise, ownership, etc., with Aaron Gleeman as well. Let's get one more break in. Couple of texts. Remind you what we have coming up tonight, both on the Fan and on the Timberwolves channel, and what we have coming up on tomorrow's show, which now I think confirmed signals the return of JG for the Friday Football Beast. Stay tuned.
It's the Bumper to Bumper Show Wrap.
It's brought to you by American Pressure.
Is Debbie Downer your new name? No, Danny Downer. Not to be confused with Polly Dana, which I've been accused of from time to time as well. Now, Texter Guy's back saying it was meant to be sarcastic, which I guess I should be better prepared for given the level of sarcasm that fuels this program. Or is he just saying that now because he gets beaten down? I'm not exactly sure how that indeed will work. It's interesting because there's going to be an ongoing battle on the Enough Said program. Lori Fisher is excited that there's some Twins games on Fox 9. I endorse it because I endorse anything that can be on local TV, over-the-air TV, period. But I think she thinks because of that affiliation that she wants to, lead with the Twins every week. And I think we did last week, and then I think she was disappointed on the basis of what I said. The truth cannot be controversial. We can't, and we're not going to be able to lead with the Minnesota Twins every week, even though this Friday is the home opener as well. I got to deal with what's in front of me, right? I didn't make up the Twins' history. They've made the decisions they have made, and I'll say again, it's their team. They have a right to do it, but then we have a right to respond, I think, to all of that as well. I did not get to the sad story that I wanted to this segment. I'll save that for tomorrow's program, which will include visits not only with Gargi, the regular producer of the show, but with Lavelle. Maybe we give Ben Gessling the week off. We'll see how he feels about that. I don't know what his schedule is. I do want to thank our outstanding array of guests today. That included Kevin Seifert at 3:30. Andy Luger, as you've never heard him before, in studio between 4 and 5 today. We lightened it up a little bit. Now, we got into some heavy subjects because you almost have to. But every once in a while, we mixed that up. There was some toy department stuff. There was some bagel stuff. There was some lunch meat stuff. And we've also were reminded of Andy's own athletic endeavors at Amherst as an offensive guard. So all of that should be available later via the podcast 4 to 5. Russo joined from the arena formerly known as the X at 5:02. Good primer on not just tonight's game, but the Wild efforts, what they intend to do to best prepare for the postseason, which is now not all that far off as well. So all of that will be podcastable, downloadable. A lot of talk early about what defines sportsmanship in 2026 and my own evolving views on that related to a couple of stories, one of them very fresh in the news. You were about to say? Oh, I thought you were about to say something. You'd lift the microphone, I thought. Your mic, it kind of droops.
Yeah. I was trying to stand up and be healthy,
I think
but
stand up, I would, I've said this many times before. In my fantasy world, we have a headset mic remote that would allow me to pace all the way around this studio. I would do that the entire show. I actually would. Now, occasionally I would try to look up for eye contact because that's helpful, but I would absolutely, it's how I talk on the phone. I don't sit. I'm usually pacing. I'm usually moving around. I would absolutely love to do that. There's an old movie called Talk Radio in which my recollection is, can't remember the name of the actor who plays the lead role. That's what he does. He's got a remote mic, and he's allowed to just move around, gesture, the whole bit.
Would you like I was thinking like a little stand-up treadmill here, but I'd be out of breath the whole time.
Yeah, that'd be the problem there. Yeah. But yeah, they all say it's healthier to stand up, and a lot of people have done that in the offices that they work, right? That they have the kinds of desks where they can raise them up and stand for a while. They can bring it back down and sit again the whole bit. That does make some sense. Easier not to doze off at that point for sure.
And I just like standing, but then when I let go of the mic, then it just falls down, and then it can't even do it.
Then it doesn't it does not even hold up. That's unfortunately true. So we're back together. I'm assuming, are you on sermons this week, or are you off this week?
No, I'm on sermons.
I think I'm on. Probably late in the week for me to try to take off, although I'm overdue for one. We'll see how that goes. But I look forward, as I said, to the return of Guardsy tomorrow. And we might even add a guest tomorrow. I'm working on a couple of other things as well. Remember tonight on the flagship, it's Minnesota Wild Hockey hosting the Vancouver Canucks. So a lot of good story angles there, obviously, including the number of players traded away are back. And in addition, if you're more of a basketball guy or gal, the Timberwolves channel will provide you, that's an iHeartRadio channel as well, Wolves and Pistons without Anthony Edwards. Pistons are still without Cade, their best player, but Anthony Edwards out tonight. That's official, correct?
Yes. In case you're wondering, Pistons up early, 18-12 in the first quarter.
Yeah, Pistons have been playing pretty well, even without Cade Cunningham. And as I said, the Wolves situation is, I think it's going to be hard to avoid 5 or 6 based on their schedule. I think, in fact, Houston won again yesterday. So we'll keep an eye on that, and I'm sure react to all of the action tomorrow. So you're covered either way. For the record, Andy Luger thinks basketball is more taxing, requires more than hockey. He admits he's more of a basketball guy than a hockey guy, but I think he's actually more a football guy than either. Is this basically coming down to, if you favor basketball, you say basketball? If you favor hockey, you say hockey.
I think
so far, that's kind of how it's gone.
Yeah.
Almost across the board, right?
I mean, yeah.
I'd like to see a couple people rise above their biases. We did have a texter who says he's a big hockey guy, thinks basketball is more exacting.
That's insanity.
You think
now, basketball is very taxing, but to say that it's more than hockey is the preposterousness. Right. He's not saying that basketball's easy.
Well, we'll take up that in more detail tomorrow. Maybe even get Guardsy to weigh in on a controversy that has lasted all week long and is not going away anytime soon. Let's wrap things up now. Thanks again for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you tomorrow at 3.